Sundays. Scout groups were in there too, youth group. I helped put the chime system in that belfry with Pastor Danny Winters. Way back when I was a teenager. That was an experience there, being high above the street level. Well, this string of steps that go from National Road down to 5th Street. That white buff brick building down there was a bakery for Born Bread. So the people in this neighborhood sometimes got a room as a fresh bread in there. As you come back up to the top of National Road, there's the back of Mingo. Right here at this point of National Road, that's heading east that way. Right here at the top, there's this little road, street that went down. They called this Pike Street. I guess it's still Pike Street. And it was considered one of the steepest streets in Wheeling. From that point there, it really drops. Drops on down to Main Street there. I think Henry Tiska lived on this street. And again, right here in the area of Mingo and the windmill, you cut across here and looking east, and it's famous Kelly Sleep. I think Samuel McCullough, we'll go over and see it in a minute, made a famous sleep on his horse to escape the Indians. Samuel McCullough. And here's the street level, and there's the hill they leap down over, and that's pretty doggone steep. That's not too far from straight down. This is on back down the National Road. On this side of the hill, you can see Interstate 70. On this side of the mountain, or not mountain, the hill. And then in the early 60s, they put a tunnel through. In the early 60s, they put a tunnel through that hill. Fly away in the Air Force. And it comes out on this side, over here at the Fort Henry Bridge that we saw earlier and connected with that across the Ohio River. And down National Road. When I was little, right at that corner right there, there used to be a house that looked like a Swiss chalet. And there's really no room there. I don't know how big of a house it was, but I can remember people living in there. And I can't get a story on it. Up above here, what they call the castle. Now, I was told last night by Mr. Hall, James Hall's dad, that castle was the dreams. It was the dream of some person who was going to build a hospital or some kind of a medical complex up there, but it never materialized. So there we have the Fort Henry Bridge crossing the Ohio River at 9th Street, Interstate 70. And then just a block to the south of it is a suspension bridge. There's a pillar and the arches to that. One of the oldest suspension bridges in the country. The Ohio Hills in the background. There's another one on the bridge. Suspension bridge. Looking through the arches of the Henry Bridge. And 2 blocks up from the bridge. There's the house out that roof right there. Okay, I'm going to drive down Pike Street now, the steepest street in Wheeling. Here's the point where it really drops to be super steep. And it looks it. I can't drive and do this. And I can remember right here on this corner there was a grocery store. And look how little that lot is. Boy, it couldn't have been too big of a store. And this is the corner of 5th and Main. This was the site where the Washington School stood. And down that street still hill behind it was the playground, and this building here was a grocery store. I used to buy candy and stuff in there. Now this is 5th Street, from clear down at the railroad track beds, looking back up to Main Street. And this corner of the wall, I'm betting, is the original wall that was the end of the playground for Washington Grade School. That looks like an old wall there. And up there where that car's gone, to the corner of Main, to right there is where the school stood. You can see how it stood on a steep bank. And on up from Main to Market, and then on up those long steps. And then up there is the windmill that we saw earlier. There's the windmill. Now I'm just sure that would be the last and the only remaining part of Washington School. That would be the corner of the playground. And as you can see, that street was steep. That's Main there where the cars are on. Down at the foot of 5th Street, this wide area here was a railroad yard. I remember lots of tracks being in here and boxcars parked on the siding, and we didn't like to come down here. We thought the bums lived down here, the hobos. But there's the Fort Henry Bridge down there. That building here is the Holly Building at 10th and Main. Actually, it's corner of 11th Main. And the main railroad track was along that bed there, which is now a walking track, I believe. Kind of a rails to trails. That's North Street Methodist Church. The parsonage to the right of it. There's the belfry where I helped put the speaker system in. Chimes. That's when the sanctuary was up on the 2nd floor. You went in that main room and there was Sunday school classes and a social hall straight in there. And you went up side steps into the sanctuary on the 2nd floor. And down 5th Street to Main there towards the Washington School. And this was Pike Street, that real steep street till we come down. That's looking back up it now. And it's a steep street. There's where that little grocery store stood. This was the playground. Looking at it from Kennedy Street down there to Main Street. That big open area on the other side of Main, that's where Stifel's Calico works. Where my dad worked there for a while, and Mr. Hall I talked to Last evening he said he had a good job there for 15 years. This is the corner of 4th and Main. And this store, or building over here with the storeroom, somebody's maintained well. I remember at one time they sold TVs in it. And when color TV first came on the market for sale, I stood there and watched color TV for the first time. And it was a Howdy Doody show. And you could see the giant's foot, and you could see the colored blue veins in the giant's foot through that, in that TV. And I just thought that was fantastic. So that would have been in the mid-50s there sometime. Now this is the site where Washington Grade School was. I remember standing there beside that fire plug, so that one and another one's been there forever. And right across the street here was this little building, and there used to be a little store there called the Todd Inn. You go in there and buy candy and kind of trinkety things. So I'm sure they made a lot of money on the school kids there. But that was the site of Washington right there. And right down there's the Ohio River. There's the fire hall that was just across the street and down 2 doors from where I lived. This house in the corner here, the corner door, that was the grocery store door, Armster's Grocery. And there used to be another front door there to the right of that window. That window at one time was a big bay window. And that was our front entrance, 702 Main Street. And there was Kruger's Bar on the grill on the corner. And then the fire hall. And I got papers delivered, I delivered papers and for 6 years, and they were dropped off at that fire hall. So I spent a lot of time at that fire hall. I guess I could buy it if I want to. It's for sale. This is the building I grew up in Wheeling, at the corner of 7th and Main. This entrance was to Armistead's Grocery Store, which was 700 Main, and ours was in this area right here, 702. We had to look upstairs over there, and we had those last 4 windows. Apartment. 7th Street coming down from Market, which also fed off of the National Road that come down over the hill there. This was Kruger's Bar and Grill. And there's the fire hall. And up main 2 blocks was Washington Grade School. To the warehouse of the grocery store. That's where they loaded and unloaded the groceries and put them in. I took my bicycle in and out of that door. I kept my bicycle in the wareroom. I think we had one room with scientists down there for storage. And I kept my bicycle in there. And down Main Street to downtown Wheeling. 3 more blocks to 10th and Main. Yeah, a cat's meow. Morning at this fire company. This will be the front of our house. Like I say, the front entrance is right there. You can see how it's sealed up. They did that in the early 50s when they widened the street. They made a lot of the houses take off their a certain amount of their property that stuck out, and there was big steps there right up to that front door. And On the second floor, above that entrance, there was a little porch up there. That was our back porch. There was a set of steps that went up there. And you see that walked in there with bricks. That was a door in the kitchen. And then that was our dining room to the left of that, and our bathroom was there. Where that parking lot and cars was part of our yard. We used to throw the ball up against that side of that house for hours. So that was fun, just bouncing the ball around. And up in the air behind that redwood, there was a backyard, and under that stone wall was there. There's a line that's been there forever. I used to have a walkway on top of it, and clotheslines, and people would hang their clothes up there. And Charlotte Conroy lived back in there. I think that was her back entrance, and this is the front entrance to that house. I'm standing in a corner of what was my backyard, and say up there was our entrance to our kitchen. You can see that cement block there between the bricks. Dining room was this other cement blocked area. That was an old wooden wall with no insulation, and that was cold. In this area, empty area here between the house and this wall, there was a garage in there. Mr. Armbruster had a garage in there. It was a one-car garage, and he extended it out here in the yard and made it two-car. One parked behind the other. That was Mr. Schaub's house across the street. I think that's an historical house, but nobody's taking care of it. And there, from our back porch, you can look down between. There used to be another house in an empty lot. But you can look down between the two of them and see the Ohio River. This house here was where Albert Holderman lived. Albert Holderman's house, Mr. Schaub, our house. And then there's a house no longer there that was where Albert Holderman's grandfather lived, where his cars are parked. There's Critters again. Stuck in beside it. I can remember the people who lived in there, but I can't remember their names. This is the windows to our living room. There's two right here. And there's a wall there, and these are the two windows with the windows to our bedroom. And then the rest of it belonged to the Armbrusters. They lived up there. The last three windows were there. This was a brick sidewalk and they lived here. This was the entrance to the warehouse. This again was where the garage was. This was that garage that used to have the walk across the peak there, like a catwalk, and then they had a clothesline there, and people that lived in those apartments would hang their clothes up there. And we look out that back porch at our dining room windows, and I remember that chimney right there, with a double stack. It's been there forever. I can remember that as plain as day. This was the view I had. Well, there was another couple houses there that were going now. Mr. Armbruster had to tear down a house that he lived there where Claude and Pauline West and their little son David, and down below was Claude's father, Grandpa West, and his sister Mildred. Where there was Albert Holderman. Bill Kennedy lived in that empty space there. And there's the view from of the Ohio River that we had. And I remember in the steam locomotive days, the steam locomotive, from our porch you could see it go along the railroad tracks down there. And black smoke would be spewing into the air. Over there's Wheeling, Allen, and the hills of Ohio. This wall here was along the backyard of Louis Ambrose's yard. This is where his house stood. There was an outhouse at 5th and Main. And down there's the arches of the Fort Henry Bridge, I-70, and 9th and Main. This is the alley between 7th and 8th Street. Back up here is 7th Street, and there's our house. You can see the Ohio River on down through the alley and across the street. On down through there between 9th and 10th Street, there's Marsh Wheeling Stogie. There's the old sign on the side of its building. This is Market Street. Goes up here to those lights are 7th Street, and that's where, to the right, it goes up National Road to the top of the hill where we were when we saw Mingo. And then you go to the left, and that's Market Street on up through there, goes on up to 5th Street. And then Market Street heading back south there, goes to downtown Wheeling. This is 8th and Market, goes on down to 9th. This big white building you see is the Wheeling Steel Building. It's 12th and Market Street. And that tallest building there is the Holly Building, the 10th and 11th Street. Make that 11th and Main, 11th and Main Street. This building here for years was the Blind Association. Blind people lived in there, and they did their crafts. They built brooms, and I don't know what else, but that was the Blind Association. This house here, near the corner of 8th and Market, was a house my grandmother lived in for a while, and I think her cousins owned that house, or somebody related, and they lived on the 1st floor, and she lived up there in the attic apartment on the 3rd floor. I don't think she lived in the 2nd. I think she lived in the 3rd. She had a great view of the river out the back window. The next door to her here was, I was thinking it was a bar, but it must have been a grocery store originally. It was Nesbitt's grocery. So this is 8th Street with the Ohio River down there. And then looking on down the 9th, Fort Henry Bridge. There's the back of that house where my grandmother lived. And she had those top 2 windows right up there. I remember it was a great view. That might have been her kitchen. But she just looked over here and down to the river. There's the bridge down there. The river's behind those houses. It's Main Street. This is a new fire hall that they built. They moved from that old building up at 7th and Main to this new one here at 8th and Main. This is the alley between 8th Street and 9th Street. And of course that's Main Street. And that house down there across the street and to the right is where my friend Bob Fields lived. They had the Fields Funeral Home there. Spent a lot of time in there. This alley at one time was cobblestone, and I collected several years back one of the stones, and I use it as a doorstop in our bathroom. Here's some examples of the cobblestone here along the edge here up against this house. I remember walking on it. It was pretty rough. They've got it backed up over now. So there's where Fields lived and the funeral home was. Mansion type house. These are actually round glass, curved glass. Those windows. Big, thick door. I remember how thick that was. This was a big back, some room of some type on the house. And then there's the Ohio River behind her house, and there's the bridge at 9th Street. They really had the view of the Ohio River and the bridge. This was a big house that belonged to the American Red Cross at the time that Bob and I were friends. We played a lot of football ball in this back parking lot. And this statue here used to stand down in front of the old courthouse at 16th and Chapel Street. It's a statue of unions. Augusta Pollock. There's a tunnel going through the hill. That sure improved the traffic flow through, really. Up there on the hill is the old Lincoln High School. One time I saw a little kid get hit underneath the bridge there. I was seeking shelter from rain, and they come running out of there and ran right out in front of the car and got hit. Right about that area right there. There we have the suspension bridge all the way up. It's just one block over the Henry Bridge. This apartment complex across the street here on the other side of Main Street, I don't remember the name of it, but it's built in a pattern of a horseshoe. You can see here's the left branch of it, and goes back in there and wraps around and comes back out as a right branch, just like a big horseshoe. And then to the right of it is Marsh Wheel and Stogie, where they make cigars that were world famous. This was the corner of 10th and Main where they built a hotel beside the suspension bridge. Over Henry Bridge. And one time when I was young, I ran down through this backyard and took a shortcut through that yard and almost paid for it. I didn't know that cellarway was there, and I cut that corner and my one leg went down in there and just about flipped me into that hole, and I could have been severely injured, I think, because it really shook me up as it was. It took me a lesson of taking shortcuts in yards that I didn't know about. Here's the entrance to the suspension bridge from Main Street. These are the cables that get into this anchoring system that's been here forever. People used to set up on this to get a good view of the parades, the big parades they had, one on this side and one on the other side. That'd just be loaded with, I hate to sit on a steep thing now. Where there was what we called the waiting room when I was a kid. Wait in there to catch a streetcar. There was an island out in the middle of that street. You go out there and stand on that island, and the streetcars would pull up to it and go on and off. This was a busy intersection in the early wheeling. Full time when I was growing up, 40s and 50s, and before that. That was one of those famous Marsh wheeling boxes. You can see how the bridge kind of arched up to just a little bit, and then it's actually downhill 3/4 of the way towards the island. And this is looking north up the Ohio River. Over Interstate 70. And this looks down the Ohio River south, heading towards Cincinnati. Down there's the bridge, the newest one in this area of Interstate 470, which bypasses Wheeling. There's the wharf down there. I think that would be the Old Windsor Hotel. Some other buildings. This is the Holly Building. Back of the Capitol Theater. These are the stage doors. Stars when that stage door there. There's an old sign on the back of the Capitol Theater. It's written really faded, but it says, "Always the best, stage and screen. Always the best on stage and screen." And that's the old railroad bed down there that they converted into that walking, jogging trail. Takes you down past the old Pennsylvania Railroad station and there's the wharf, where it used to be the main action area for Mercer and Wheeling. And that's the stage door next stage door to the Capitol Theater. There are a lot of stars over the years that went in and out. They say the Holly Building is now called the Mall Center. Changed hands, ownership. There's the front of the Capitol Theater. And there's that entrance back to the stage door. Big buses drive back through that entrance. Unload all our stuff. There's the arch to the suspension bridge back in there. The old original marquee on that theater was really unique. It said West Virginia's largest theater, 3,000 seats. This was a little diner that's been here forever. My dad used to eat in there a lot. He knew the people real well. He loved eating there. Inside the Capitol Theater, Capitol Garage. And, years ago, my dad's younger days, he parked cars in there. And then years after that, I washed cars back in there, back on the washing rack. This was a 10-story building known as the Holly Building. WWVA radio station was on the 10th floor up there. And this area here was where the entrance was to the old steel bridge. Here's that building that was the Holly Building, Capitol Theater. And then they turned in there in this little narrow street and went across the steel bridge to the alley. And when they built the Fort Henry Bridge, then they took this one down. They actually dropped it in the river and dismantled it in the river. And this was Stone & Palmer's department store. It was the anchor store for Wheeling, I think, or one of the main anchor stores. And this big corner window here was always the big attraction at Christmas time. They always had a major display in it. People would stand there and look out, really view the people. And my mother worked in there for 33 years in the tea room. And it was right across the street here from the Capitol Theater. This little alley was known as Stone's Alley. There used to be a hat shop down there on the right that my grandmother Little would win and buy hats. She's looking through the front doors of former Stone & Thomas. Sure looks different in here now than it used to. Stone & Thomas was, I think, the only store that ever had escalators. And you can see them back in there. And boy, I remember when they put them in and they opened it up, boy, it was just it was the biggest thing that hit Wheeling. That was really great. We all came down and rode the escalators. And this was the front entrance to the Holly Building, now the Mall Center. And several elevators back in there. And when you went in the Holly Building, this was a newsstand in here. And it was quite popular. It was run by a blind man. I forget his name. And boy, everybody would stop there and buy their papers and candies and tobaccos. And then on back in here was the elevators. 3 or 4 of them run by operators. Back in there was on the inside of the Capitol Garage. To the left there, on this little white wall, was the waiting room where the people would come in, wait for the cars to be delivered to them. There's the ramp up to the next levels. And back in behind that ramp, way back there where that light is, was a wash rack where I wash cars. And this little storefront in there, that was a barber shop for years run by a guy that I graduated with, Jerry Rose. But before that, I remember it was something that I can't say it was something, but I don't remember what it was. Stone & Thomas. Those are employees' entrance. My mother went in and out. Punched her time clock. That little diner. There was always a music store in that corner, and it still is. Used to be a bowling alley down underneath the Capitol Theater, down those steps. I don't think it's there, basically. I don't know if they could see through this window or not, but there's a a little picture of that would be Tinsel Market where that streetcar is going around. And you can see that island up there in the middle of the street. And the waiting room's to the right, and across Main there's the Old Bridge Hotel, and there's the bridge. This building where the waiting room was actually above it there. That was a hotel called the Wheeling Hotel. I think the entrance is right there. Our neighbor Calvin King worked in there as a night clerk at the hotel desk, and one night some of the guys come in and robbed him and hit him over the head with something. I think he became a blind man from that. Calling the blizzard of 2003. This is President's Day, and it snowed all day yesterday on Sunday, and I guess it snowed all night pretty bad. There across the street, Betty has got hers opened up. You can see how deep it was in her little walk there in the driveway. And they've been plowing the streets, but you still can't see macadam. They're passable. There is a vehicle. And here's our walk. I don't know if you can tell the depth of the snow, but it's pretty heavy there. And of course it gets deeper out there where they plowed it in from the street. So now we got the challenge of clearing that so we can get in and out of the house easier. Sure is pretty. But coming with it is the challenges of cleanup. It was up pretty heavy, pretty far around that stop sign down there at the corner. Trying to get a gauge here, you can tell how deep we are around our property here. Sometimes that's hard to do when everything's white. Other than Betty's dimension. And there's our little Japanese maple on the other side of the driveway. See how high it up is in there. There's Betty's driveway. Here's a view out of our landing window. You can see how deep the snow is here on our back porch roof. Somebody's running a snowblower. To get out of running here pretty soon. And right here on the rabbit cages and the tree, or under the tree and the roof. In the garage, you can see it's pretty deep. Now that's even under the tree. So we got to get down there and work on getting that path to the garage so we can get the snow blown out. See the snow depth on the back of Shorty and Joanne Steele's roof. Or if you stand here, you can look right across to the borough building, but I can't see it from there because of that big hump of snow. There's our picnic table out there. Hard to tell from here, but that hump right there is the corner of the van. There's the van, or what you can see of it. Now we have a little bit of gauge of how deep the snow was there. I got a a hand shovel the path out to the garage. Got some fuel mixed up with a snow blower. It's sitting there waiting to go. Look at the depth of that. Well, thank goodness it's a light snow. It wasn't that heavy to move. I'm going down there and measure it here real soon. As soon as my hands warm up. Okay, we got the yardstick out here in the snow. We're going to give it an unofficial measurement. And I would say it's 17 inches, plus or minus whatever you want to give it, for drifting and other factors. So we'll call it 17, that's enough. So the snow blowing process will begin. Check back later. Getting pretty high out there. Well, it's the day after the blizzard of 2003, and most of us are dug out, or we have our passages made so we can get out. We just made a little hole into our porch so the mailman can get in and we can get in. Sure, it's pretty after you're all doing your work, done doing your work. It's nice to look at. We all have big piles of snow to live with now. Good thing spring's not too far away. Here's our little passage from the driveway over to the front porch entrance. And this is up our driveway out to the street. You can see how high the banks are there. 17 inches of snow plus all the shoveled snow on top. There's Betty's across the street. And we got to get the van shoveled out yet. You can see here how much snow we have sitting on the hood. That's in the ballpark of 17 inches there, I'm sure. This is our little path down to the garage now. Like going on a bobsled track. Going out to the back alley or into the garage. There's an old 1966 Ford Galaxy 500 sitting over there.
I see you.
And there's Susie Bell. Where you going on?
How is it out here?
Not bad. It gets cold after a while. Happy Valentine's Day!
Beach. Cool. When's he going down there to work? May. John is
Did he? Is he going to Ocean City, Maryland?
He said we're not allowed to come visit him.
Whatever. Oh, no way. Rach.
You make sure that Mommy says it's okay that you light that when you light it, okay?
I know. I have a candle in my room.
Everybody
You have
keeps
to bring it
buying.
downstairs if you want.
Yeah,
Oh, that's precious.
Isn't that pretty?
That's real
You're
pretty.
welcome. Emily has other candles for you, I just don't know where they are. Just a couple.
That dolphin would actually look nice in the downstairs bathroom. You could put it in the downstairs bathroom.
Now these, see how these
It would
candles
be
have
yours.
plastic?
Yeah.
You can only use the plastic ones in here, okay? Because the metal ones will crack the glass.
Okay.
So you have to use the plastic.
There's some really neat birds out there. They have yellow tips on their tails and red tips on their wings. And they're really a neat color. I don't know if I've seen them around here before. Look at that tail. He's a pretty bird. Beautiful bird, huh, that is? You see the red tips in their wings? Wow, we gotta look those up in the bird book. Aren't they pretty, Liz? Yeah. Hey Max, you're missing these pretty birds out here. Hurry up before they fly away. Come on. They are pretty birds. A tail. Had frost in the window this morning, so we're looking through that. It was 8 degrees this morning on March the 3rd. But after tomorrow, it's supposed to start warming back up to more normal temperatures. Spring's here.
It better be.
You're not going to wear a coat this morning?
I'm taking it off.
Okay.
I might strip down to my sports bra.
Woo! Let me get a close-up. Take a few warm days to get rid of the snow. It's going to be nice today. They say in the 50s, at least 50.
One of these days, stand still.
Very much for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. Your hospitality has been very warming. And it's so wonderful to hear the support that you give to homemakers. I've always had a problem when somebody would say, "You're a housewife." I said, "No, I'm a homemaker." That makes the difference. And when Joanna and I were just talking about when our kids were younger. My older son is 27, and the younger one has a birthday next week. He'll be 25, which is hard to believe because it seems like yesterday. But in those days, when they were little, up until about, I'd say maybe 6 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom. Had a couple part-time jobs where, I could work while they were in school, and if they got sick, I was home. And it was very important for me to do that. It was a priority of our family that I be there for them. And it has been wonderful. They have appreciated it, and they told me so. And I was just telling Joanne, when my older son was in 8th grade, they had to write an autobiography. And in it, he said, I've had a wonderful life. And I thought, that's it. That's why I stayed home, and that's why I did what I did. And we didn't have much money. We only had the one income. And it was all worth it. It truly was. It was worth all the scrubbing and saving, but we had a good time, too. And part of the good time was gardening. We had a garden out in Altoona. Even though we had a small lot, it was only a double-sized lot, maybe 50 by 120, we still put in a garden. And the kids always helped with the garden. And some of the best pictures we have is one of them sitting on Dad's knee with, holding the hose, watering the plants in, or, mixing a little bit of the soil up with some compost and finding a few worms in there, having a good old time, getting their hands dirty. And I think that's the best thing a kid can do, is to get dirty. I don't think kids get dirty anymore. I've seen too many clean kids. I think they need to be out there. Get some dirt under the nails. I mean, this is going to be the cleanest mine are going to be now until maybe November. So really, and I don't have nails now too, because I've cut those down. Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty time of the year. But what I'd like to share with you tonight, I did bring some plants with me, and I also have some books too. Let me get those. And people are often asking about the good books that you can get, that will, if you're not an established gardener, if you just want to start out with a good book, what's a good book to get? This book is The Garden Primer, or Primer. For those of us from the 50s, it was Primer. And it's by Barbara Damrosch, and she and her husband, Elliot Coleman, used to have a program on the Learning Channel, Gardening Naturally. And that's part of my lifestyle too, is we're very organic at our house. Joanna and I were talking about nursing the kids, and I made my own yogurt. I was Earth Mother, bottom line. And her book is really wonderful because it takes you to the basics. It tells you about the tools, about the seeds, how to plant, how to even design your garden. Another good book that you need to get, and there are many, many out there. This is one of my favorites. It's a colored handbook of garden insects, because not all bugs are bad bugs. You need some good insects out there in your garden, and the best way to find out which ones they are is to get a good handy reference book. And this is one I just picked up recently, Landscape Problem Solver. Our landscape is basically, we have some hedges and we have some grass. We really like to garden. We like to get the vegetables and the fruits, and we like the flowers. Landscaping is nice if it works out well. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Our big thing last year, we put in a water garden, and the pond started out being maybe 5 feet wide by 10 feet across, while it ended up being 20 feet long by 12 feet wide. It started out being only 3 feet deep, and you know how it is when you start seeing a little rock here and there, and you think, I can clean that up, I'll make it nice and even. It ended up being 5 feet deep in one end and about 3 feet in the other. But what's really nice about doing something like that, and you all know about the ledges that we have out here in the cove. I mean, you hit a rock and it's a ledge. And but one of the nice things is that the fish last well. During this winter, we never brought them in. We had the pump running the entire time, and the fish did fine. My husband was out there every day, God bless him, and he was breaking up the ice to let a little bit of oxygen, and the rotting plants and things and the waste from the fish also. If you don't break the ice, they can suffocate the fish. So whenever he would do that every day, it broke it, and they're fine. They lasted. I think we only lost 2, so that's not too bad. This is one of the most recent books I got, Month by Month Gardening in Pennsylvania by Liz Ball. And I'll tell you, this is really a wonderful book to get. It tells you month by month what you can do, and it's about Pennsylvania. So many books you get are by Southern writers, which is fine for the South, but it doesn't work. And especially when you have so many microclimates around, this is really a great book to get. And the last one I'd like to share with you, and I have some examples of it, is Companion Planting, Garden Companions. And this is something that I do in my garden, because as I said, we're organic at our house. And what this book will tell you, and there are many, many books like this too, is that there are some plants that benefit others because of their growth patterns, because of the smell that they emit. One of the things they say in the book is to grow garlic with your roses, because the beetles, the Japanese beetles, hate the smell of garlic. So if you grow the garlic, or even geraniums, because they're relatively the same, you can grow those by your roses, and then you don't have to worry about sprays. Because that's one of the things too, we have to be good stewards of our environment. And by not using the sprays, the chemicals and all of that kind of thing, by going to the natural approach, we'll have a better environment for our plants, for our animals, because, you know, once you spray too, the pets can get into that, and really it can cause them some problems. So by using this book, this Garden Companion book, and I have some sheets for you on that, it's worked really, really well. It keeps down on the insect problems with the infestations, and it also, you have a beautiful garden. You know, you're not just growing onions, you're growing, or tomatoes, or just peppers. What you're doing is you're going to be growing some oregano with those tomatoes, some basil around those tomatoes and peppers. And all of that makes, well, you can have your whole salad there too, you know, within hand's reach. And in our garden, we use the raised bed system. We don't use any framing of wood. We don't use any kind of a wood, and best not to use any treated lumber in your gardens, because that stuff can leach into the soil, and that can actually get into your vegetables that you're eating. So what's best to do is to just either use plain untreated wood, or just to use the soil itself and make your raised beds. What we do is we level the garden off. Last year we were lucky enough, and I love living in a cove because we can get cow manure. It's wonderful. So we put in a whole load of cow manure in the garden, tilled it under, added some winter rye, let that grow, and then this spring we're going to till again. And then once we till again, we'll make our beds, and the shovels that we use for the shovels of soil that we use to take out our paths, we put into the garden bed. So we'll have these small little beds. They look like little graves actually. They're about 3 feet by 3 feet, or 3 by 4, depending on the size of the plant that we're growing too. But we'll have those there, and we'll have the paths. We'll take the path soil, put it on top of those beds, and there you have a raised bed. It works out really well. Then in the path that you've taken out, you know, you may go down about a foot and take out that soil, put in some mulch, or put in some compost. And that way it keeps the weeds down, and it keeps them from growing into your garden bed. And the other thing too, if there's one thing I have to stress, is compost, compost, compost. There is nothing better that you can add to your soil than compost, be it stuff that you buy or stuff that you make yourself. At home we have, I think, 4 compost bins. We did treat ourselves to our last year's anniversary by buying, what else, a compost bin that turns. It's a turner, you know, so this year's our 30th. I don't know what we're going to do, maybe put in a window or something. But it's so romantic after the 25th. But this compost turner is really great though, because you put all of your garden waste in there, and then every day you turn the thing. It's on a big crank. It's elevated about 3 feet above the ground on a stand, and you turn this thing, and it just turns all of the material inside the compost, and in 2 weeks' time, you have usable compost, which is fantastic. I mean, you have a whole bunch of summer's growth right there for you. But it's something that you need to think about, and what's really good about compost too is it not only takes away, you know, it keeps the weeds down, but it also maintains the moisture in your soil. And last year with the drought that we had, we really didn't have a problem in our garden. We had so much compost in our soil that it worked really, really well to maintain that moisture. And that's the other thing too about raised beds. When you have them raised like that, and you have the compost in there, it really does seem to maintain the moisture a lot better than just having those flat garden beds, because sometimes when you have the flat garden bed and you get a good soaking rain, it can wash everything out. But enough on that. I know we're running short on time. I'm sorry. It happens. But I wanted to share with you something that you can do with a strawberry jar. I was going to get my soil and fill it up, but I know we're running short on time, so I'll just explain to you what I've done. This is just one of those plastic jobbies. You know, instead of getting the ceramic type or the clay pots I find really dry out quickly. And if you are going to use a clay pot, let it soak even maybe 24 hours in some water so that it's really good and moist by the time you're going to plant it. These plastic ones work really well, but what I recommend you do, what I got is a piece of plastic that you use for, I think it's swimming pools. I got this down at Long's. It's just plastic swimming pool tubing for the pumps and all. And I got a piece big enough to fit in with maybe giving about a couple inches from the bottom. And then I cut holes in the side. The piece of wood is in there to keep it stiff until it's able to stand alone by itself because it comes on a roll, so it's sort of curled. But this I'm going to stand in the middle of the soil, pack the soil around it, and then put all of your plants in. And the other tip, these are those, you know, the little bathroom cups that you get. You only, a container like this is about 12 plants. And it doesn't have the lip on it. Sometimes you can really find, you're lucky enough to find those that have the lip that can maintain the plant on it. Since this didn't, and I got this on sale and I couldn't pass it up, what you do is you stick your little cup in there, you cut it in half first, and then you stick it in and I don't think there's anything better than the smell of herbs, and this is lemon balm, which is a lovely, lovely plant to have. Okay. When you're going to plant your plant, get rid of some of that soil on there and lay it on your cup like this. And then you can compact it a bit more till it fits, so it's about the size of that cup. Then, I'll clean up, I promise. You're gonna smash that in there. Let me get some of this out. Okay. And it's really all right to do this to the roots because, you know, what you're doing, you are stressing them a little bit, but what you're also doing is making them want to grow a little bit more. So that's quite all right. So you can stick this plant in there, and that cup will be on the bottom, and it'll hold that soil in until this starts rooting into the container itself, and then it's not going to go anywhere. Then, once you get this all filled with plants, you have this in the middle already. As you're putting in the soil and building up, you can just water through this tube and water around the plants also. And what this is going to do is enable the water to go all the way down to the bottom of the container so that you're going to get some moisture down there for your roots. And it'll also go along the sides where the slits are. The water will come out of there also. It's best to put in a bigger divot, I'd say, because that way then you'll have more moisture going into those side shoots. But that's just a little handy tip for you. Thank you. And then one of the other things I want to share with you is this. This is a relatively new product. It's called Moisture Plus, and it helps keep soil from drying out. It's little crystals that look like gelatin almost. But when you add water to them, they do bead up. And what they're able to do then is to maintain moisture in your potting soil so that you don't have to water as often. And it'll keep your plants really nice and moist. It does work especially if you have window boxes. And what you can do is to just put it, there are directions on here. You put a couple of sprinkles in this and the regular soil, stir it up a little, and then plant your plants. And then when you water, these things just suck up water, and they do look like little pieces of gelatin. and they'll maintain that moisture better for you so you don't have to water as often. And does anybody have any questions? Can we go out and garden and do something? I'll tell you, this morning when I woke up and saw this snow, I just couldn't believe it because I had just put in some pansies the other day. And under 4 inches of snow were all those pansies, but they're all right. They'll handle it, and so will snapdragons, so if you happen to see some. And a friend of mine told me that she had been looking for some snapdragons that were called Madam Butterfly snapdragons, and apparently they're gorgeous. They are almost like a double snapdragon. I was out at one of the greenhouses and they had some, and I was just so delighted. So I've never grown them myself, but she said they're really worth it. So I'm going to give those a shot. And that's what's really nice about gardening too. You know, you get out there, you get your hands dirty. You get to feel that soil, and for me there's nothing better than to be out there with the sun shining and just having that, you know, Mother Nature and the good Lord beaming down on you. And you're doing some good work, and you know, the vegetables that you grow, when you have extra, you give to the neighbors, you help out with whomever you can. That's what gardening is about for me anyway. And as I said, it's really a good hobby to have. It keeps you dirty, and yet people are thrilled that you're out there working. And it's just one of those, I don't know, I think we all need to get back to nature because it puts everything into perspective. You know, if the plants don't grow, then we don't eat. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that we are, you know, we're just little people on this planet. And the good Lord has to bless us with the water, and has to bless us with the sunshine, and the plants, and everything else has to work together. And if anybody doesn't believe there's a higher power doing all of this, you know, let them try to garden and not realize that. That's the other thing too. It does bring you closer. Some of the plants that I wanted to talk with you about too, I mean, there's nothing better in your garden than basil. If you're going to put in some tomato plants, put in some basil. Just the smell of this thing is just remarkable. And it's really great because it also deters some insects from your tomatoes, and it also adds to the flavor of your tomatoes as they grow. There's something about the basil that just makes a more flavorful tomato, so try that. And of course you need chives. Chives are always good if you have baked potatoes, or if you like them in recipes with salads, they're always great. And they also ward off some insects like aphids. They're really good for that. Plus a few other insects too. Lemon verbena is a wonderful plant to get, and I always make sure, if you like the smell of lemon, this is the herb to buy, because it not only will grow up nice and tall, and it does get a little bit bushy too, but it also has this beautiful red bloom flower that comes out of it. But it's that smell of lemon once you brush up against it. It makes a lovely tea, so you can dry the leaves, and or just use them in a salad if you'd like to, or even with gelatins and that type of thing. As long as you grow it yourself and you don't, and with herbs, it's best not to ever use any kind of a fertilizer besides just a regular type of compost. That's all you need for the herbs. They really don't require that much. They don't usually have a problem with insects. And in our garden, if there is an insect problem, we get rid of the plant. Because one thing too is you have to realize if the plant is having a problem, it's because it's either in a wrong location or else it was infested before you bought it. So when you buy plants, look and make sure there aren't any insects on it. Look underneath a leaf. Sometimes, generally, if there are some things on there, just a good spray of water will take care of it. You don't have to go through the insecticidal soap and all. You can make that yourself, or else you can buy it. But generally, a good hose of water will take care of the problems with it. But if you're going to just be putting in a new garden, what you want to do is to check the site of the garden itself. Just go out there during the day. Mark down, keep a journal at what time you went out, where the sun was located. Because you want a garden that's going to get at least between 8 and 10 hours of sunlight for a good, healthy garden. There are plants that can thrive in some shade, but generally they like to have the sun. Okay? The other thing is to keep that journal going. We have a journal for every year we've ever put in a garden. Even I still have the ones from Altoona, but because I've learned from them. And that's the other thing. Take notes. Notice what plants did well for you. If you have a certain variety of tomatoes that really grow well for you, that are good keepers for onions, those that have canned well, that you get a lot of juice from, you know, whatever. Just keep that journal going from year to year. And the other part too is crop rotation is awfully important whenever you do garden. You cannot have your tomatoes in one set spot every year, because what happens is if you get a bad infestation of an insect, they're going to know where to come back every year, and you're going to have that problem. If you rotate your crops, then they're going to have to go searching. And it's amazing that even little insects have brains. They can do this kind of thing. So it's best to, and it's also beneficial to your soil too, because sometimes the insects will overwinter in the soil. And then they'll come up looking for those tomato plants. They're not there, and they'll die off or they'll leave. Another thing you want to do too is have a bird bath in your garden. Invite the birds in, because they'll also, you know, they'll eat some of those insects too. Even have bat houses. Luckily we have pine trees, so we don't need bat houses. Or butterflies, you know, to have those certain plants that butterflies really like to have the sunflowers. And just have your variety. And that's what's nice about doing companion planting, because of the variety in the garden, the plants do better, and I do better, because just looking out at them and seeing the geraniums coming up with certain flowers or certain other vegetables and herbs, it really makes for a pretty garden, and it also invites your beneficial insects. It invites the butterflies and invites the birds, and it invites people in too. They see it as a place just a place to come and as a little retreat, just to hear the water coming from the pond, or just to watch the birds flitter around, or the little insects buzzing. It's really a nice place to be. And if you need bees in your garden, grow borage. Borage is a lovely plant, it's a lovely herb, has a fuzzy blue flower to it, the bees love it. And I know a few years back we were all short on bees because there was that mite problem with them. But I really had no problem with having some honeybees in my yard because there was so much, I had a lot of borage. And borage spreads. It's just a lovely plant that you can use too. Should I stop because there's not much time left? It's 9 o'clock and I could go on for 3 days. Does anybody have any questions?
What did you say to plant your roses?
For roses, to deter the Japanese beetles, it's best to plant, you can have geraniums there, and you can also plant garlic. And I used to keep garlic near my roses all year round, and I would just trim them down whenever they would get too tall, and it seemed to really work well for me. And the other thing too with roses is you want to keep a lot of air around those roses. That way you won't get black spot. And that helps because of the air circulation. You need good air circulation through your roses. Anybody else? Well, if you ever think of anything, I'm in the book. I think it's under W. Timothy Arnold. Please give me a call. I'd be happy to help you out anytime. Okay, thank you very much for having me tonight.
This is Chrisman Avenue in Washington, Pennsylvania. I have found a diary that was written by my father, Harry Donald Dinsmore, back in 1926, and this would be when he was 11 years old, and he lived on this street at the address of 110 Chrisman Avenue, and I just came to look it up. The house no longer exists. In fact, there's no house with number 110 anymore, but I'm going to look at the space where it was. Okay, there is a double house with the numbers 106 and 108, and then the next house is a much newer house with 112. So somewhere in that area there used to be a 110, which was the house that he lived in for a while on Chrisman Avenue in Washington, PA. 106, 108, and 112. So it fell right in that area right in there, I would assume. Kind of on a bank, it goes up a hill. It's nice back up in there, and up on the top of the hill are some real mansions. But this is the neighborhood that he lived in for a while at 11 years of age, and they moved from here and went back down to Greene County to the farm in Nebo Ridge, Rich Hill Township. Now this is the back of that lot. That greenhouse you see there is a 106, 108 property, and this is that newer home, which is 112. So And this area would have been the back of 110. So you can see there, this was their backyard and this was the alley behind it. It was on a drop down there. You can see by the neighborhood's lawns. So this was our father and uncles and grandparents' backyard at one time in 1906. Down the alley, and then it goes on up the hill. And like I say, there's some real mansions up there. That's a street that has still brick street and big mansions. There's a pretty crabapple here in this alley. Here's an example of some of those mansions on that next street up. This is really a top-notch street here. It's the next street above their house. It's particularly striking. Pretty nice neighborhood. Crispin Avenue is just off East Wheeling Street. Down here wasn't quite as fancy, but it wasn't a bad neighborhood. There's a couple big houses that I'm sure were there in 1926. And those nice houses were only a couple doors down from where they lived. In that little area. .110. Now over there's the 110 hole on Crispin, and then you come on down in the others, down that bank, and there was a little run down in there, in this hall. And I can see my dad and Gross and Robert down in there playing in that run for sure, in their younger days. Right up there was 110, and up on that hill, to those trees were those mansions we saw. Interesting place to live for your childhood. I'm in Washington Park. I assume that's the name of it, in Washington, PA. And this is the main pavilion where when I was a kid and way before that, there was many Dinsmore reunions held. And I remember coming up to a lot of them. Most of the time I can remember, my mind goes to this lower area. Picnic tables in there and all the food, the eating and gathering and visiting and whatever you do at a reunion. Having a great time. But I haven't been there for years and years, but I had that pavilion in my mind and I really wanted to revisit it. It's a pretty park. The hilly area of Washington. You can see it drops down on this side. I think there's little runs in there. And I remember as a kid when we come up here to those reunions, we'd go for these walks. And there was little bridges across that run, and we called them the Billy Goat Gruff Bridges. I don't know if they're still down in there or not. The upper area is a big, we'll look at it a little bit, a big wide open smooth floor. It looks like it could be a dance floor. But this is the area I remember. There was a kitchen in there, I think, where you could get your food ready. And the tables out in there. And eating. And many a good meal served in this area over the years. I think there was a kitchen back in there, behind these double doors here. This is the far end of it. don't know what these areas look like. People set charcoal grills in there and cook in there. It's like charcoal residue in the ground. This is across the road. Down in there's those little runs. And I see one bridge down there. Now that's a bridge, but they were pretty fancy bridges at that time, I think, with banisters and maybe arched. A regular maze of a path down into there with several bridges in my mind. By the way, this flowering tree here is Cereus canadensis, redbud, eastern redbud. They're really pretty this time of year. Road loops all around this pavilion. This goes to the upper side. It's a flying crab apple. That's the upper side of this pavilion. This upper side, like I said, looks like there's a dance floor or something in there. Could be used for that. Probably is at times. It's either a dance floor or a skating rink, or both. Bench seats along the side here. Pretty neat place for an old structure. Somehow I don't have a memory from being up here. My memories are only for in that lower area. Maybe there was other things going on up here that we weren't allowed to come up to. I don't know. This is up on the stage. Big stage. Seems to me I remember this brick sidewalk going on along the edge here. Probably do remember that. These charcoal pits where they cook outside the back of the kitchen. There's old pictures of Dinsmore reunions way back into the teens that were held here, big reunions. And you can always see this pavilion in the background. I just wonder if those pictures were set up here in this side yard. Because that lower side has that bank that drops off and in the road, unless it was different way back then. Seems to me you can always see that pavilion. Somewhere in here those pictures were probably set up. And usually they look like they were taken by a professional photographer back then. Well, it's been great revisiting this place. Washington, Pennsylvania, Washington Park. Main pavilion. And you come on up here to the top of the hill. There's a stone pavilion. A big playground up here. And a ball field. And even a cell phone tower. Part of the newer era. These were the famous markers that lined U.S. Route 40 years ago, back probably in the 30s and 40s. They were put here on these desks, and I think I've read something. And they were all along there at certain intervals. And they were famous for Route 40. And this is the one in front of Washington Jefferson College here in Washington, PA. There's the other side of it, heading east. The side that said to Wheeling was heading west.